just want to thank you for coming out here.
Thank you for having me.
To conduct this with us. And, well, first let me just open by saying I heard a few people talking. How many people here from Brooklyn originally? Okay.
Oh, I think 4.
Okay. And how many people still on occasions go back every now and then? Like maybe the Peterloo's Steakhouse or
It's more than. Oh, I haven't been there in a while. I have to go there.
Well,
Have you ever been?
I've been there a few times. I wasn't born there. My father was. That's his stomping ground, and he's taken me to a few restaurants every now and then, you know, or will remember one from back. He was there in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. Came out here in the early 70s, and it is quite a multicultural place. As in the book, there's some vast descriptions, and I just want to ask, when did you first start? I know that you had a number of pieces from over the years that you've written, but when did you first start culminating it all together, like into a sort of a section story?
I was about 17 years old, and I always say I didn't choose to be a writer. The writing came to me because it was very therapeutic. All the things that were going on in my life. There was a lot of dysfunction growing up. My mom and grandma was Jewish. My dad was Sicilian from Italy. He left when I was born. My mom was 19 and had me. And then somewhere down the road, I must have been 14, 15 when I met this really bad guy who was in organized crime. But I didn't know it as of yet. We were so young. And
you met him in Brooklyn?
Yeah, living in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. You know, I wasn't aware of it at the beginning. We were so young. And as the years started going on, I couldn't break up with this boy. And all of the things that my mother was doing, one day I sat down with an old Smith Corona that my grandmother gave me, and I just started writing my feelings. Not that there wasn't any therapy back then, there was, but we didn't really do that back then, and there wasn't the antidepressants, all of that stuff. So I wound up writing 400 pages within 3 months. I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't follow an outline, but I went with my gut, like I always do, and I wrote this book, and then I took it and I hid it under the bed for a couple of years until I realized, I had something there, and I would always go back to it, change, and that was the first draft. I had to be 17 years old when I did it.
Well, one thing that stands out to me, and it's mentioned in the beginning and at the end of the book, and then as you see on the cover of the book, you have the picture of the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, right.
And you make mention of the man that built the Brooklyn Bridge. And you've heard of the phrase probably, many bridges to cross.
Right.
And when we get to the end of the book, as your character Samantha is putting that piece together that Janice told her, there's another reference to the bridge. And just in my thought after reading this book, I would definitely say that you've crossed that bridge.
Yes, yes. And I just want to point out, I loved Brooklyn. I loved where I grew up. I think it was a certain people in Brooklyn that I had to get away from. I just wanted to get over the bridge. It wasn't that I wanted to run away from Brooklyn, but for me, the light of my life was getting over the bridge and getting into Manhattan and to become a writer and to have a different life from the life that I grew up.
Well, there are characters in the story that are members of, we'll say, up-and-coming members of the underworld. And I could recall stories that my father told me. He was from Greenpoint, and there were members, maybe they were small time or up and coming, but there was something that was always present in the neighborhood, whether it was numbers or gambling. And the characters in the book are involved with stolen goods.
Right.
So they fell off the truck.
They fell off the truck. Yes. How did you get that brand new Akai receiver for $20? Said fell off the truck.
Yeah.
But with this, I as I'm going through this, you could picture the atmosphere in your mind with the festival. My girlfriend and I were just at San Gennaro. So I went back through that section with the festival in Brooklyn was described, and it's so vivid.
It's still the same.
It's
still the same. Except a lot of, the men aren't there the way they were years ago. Who's incarcerated, who's dead, who's in the witness protection program. But it basically is all the same. And I don't think that the mob is the way it was years ago. I don't think they're as strong. I think it's much more weak, especially with the shows that are on TV today. For them to be on, I can't even imagine. So it's something that I just don't find it glamorous. I don't like it.
Right.
I was subjected to it as a child. And, people say, well, why couldn't you get out? Why couldn't you break up with your boyfriend? Because you can't. And when you want to, there were times when I thought I was going to get killed. And, I was always in the presence of guns, always in the presence of, someone's going to get murdered or someone's going to, you know how it is. And it was very scary for me growing up. And I didn't have the stability of a dad. And I had a mother who was very promiscuous. She did a lot of drugs. So there was a lot of things to my disadvantage, but I had that Jewish grandmother who was unbelievable to me.
Yes.
And thank God for her. And I made my own way, and it worked out really well.
Very, very enlightening and very just comforting throughout. Encouraging, enlightening. Seemed like a very special individual.
Yes, she was. She was. And she guided me tremendously. And I was a woman who grew up in this world, and I just wanted a better life for myself. I couldn't imagine staying in that world. I wanted out. And I think when you want out of something, you have enough faith, you get out of it.
Speaking of things on that term of the Italian and mafia, there's a couple of, there are a few moments of, we'll say, racism discussed in it. One of the things that stood out, and I sort of right away, was toward the middle of the book, the term the mustache Pete is used in there. And there was actually a book called Mustache Pete not that long ago. I believe it was by Fred Gorfe. But do you want to maybe elaborate a little bit on that term? Because some people have maybe never heard of that. It's like the old with the mustache, like wheeling the... As far as
that goes, it means a lot with the mafia. It means a lot to do with the mafia. And it's so funny because they don't believe in facial hair. So I don't even know why they refer to Mustache Pete. And I have to get that book. I didn't know there was a book out. I need to get that book. They were very into, as you know, the mob, into wheeling and dealing. And sometimes they would refer to a Mustache Pete as a rat, sometimes, believe it or not, because they have facial hair. I know it makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense to me either. But this is how they would talk amongst themselves. I mean, a lot of people, before they became made men, had to shave off any of their facial hair. It's very interesting. And the way they are with women, you have to be a certain way with a woman as well. There's just nothing normal about it. Yes. And having lived it for so many years, it was just nothing normal.
There's one portion where Samantha is at Tony's house, and it's brought up when one of the women mentions to her, that's the way it is. You have to just act the part and put up and just let them behave the way that they behave, so it shows that they're the macho side.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's.
And I didn't believe in that. I was in, and then I wanted out, and the only way I got out is when he got convicted. And when he got convicted, and he was, on trial, his lawyer at the time actually asked me, you need to lie and say that you were with him on this night. You need to commit perjury. And I wasn't going to do that. And we were in the lawyer's office, and he openly smacked me in the lawyer's office. And I took it. You shut up, you take it. And then I knew I was out of there. I would never commit perjury for anyone. And I had gone to the judge's chambers, and we were in full discussion about this. And she said, you can't do this, Suzanne. I can put you away for this. And that was it. Fate stepped in, and he wound up getting convicted and going to jail. And I got out. But even when he was away behind bars, whoever I dated on the outside, if it were a normal guy, would send someone to hurt them so they wouldn't date them. Till I turned 27 and I met my husband, who was a Wall Street guy, and they got to him too, and they said, you know, you can't date her. And he said, well, I'm going to date her because I'm friends with Rudy Giuliani, and I don't go that route, so I'm going to marry her, and end of story. And we wound up getting married, thank God, and here we are, 15 years later, but I can't imagine it. I can't imagine.
Is he still in jail?
He was in the witness protection program, which I was shocked because he was such a tough, he was just notorious. He was a murderer, and he was in the witness protection program. Now he's taken himself out. That's the latest I heard.
And do you fear his existence?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't. I really don't. Because what I've been through in my life, if you read the book, if you are familiar with it, it doesn't matter anymore. I would never live in fear anymore. It's not that way. And I don't even think he cares. I'm sure they know about the book, but who knows?
When you were living in Bensonhurst, even till this day, I've never knowingly been in Bensonhurst.
It's changed so much now.
But I was going to ask you, when you were there or after you got out, I remember growing up, we didn't have any girls in my school because my school was a private school, so they didn't come from they came from the neighborhood, but they came from all over too. But I always heard that Bensonhurst was where they lived.
Yeah, it's true.
So that's what I was wondering.
It's true.
You'd never go to Bensonhurst,
it's funny. You wouldn't go, but you would go. It was one of the most protected neighborhoods.
Yeah,
around.
if you were right.
If
They wouldn't bother you.
Of course,
they wouldn't have bothered my family because we weren't there, but we just didn't go.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. I mean, we can walk the streets at midnight. Not that I was walking the streets, but you can, and no one would bother you. It was just one of those things. It was just unbelievable the whole time. I remember the first time when I saw Goodfellas. I'm watching this movie, and Lorraine Bracco happens to be a dear friend of mine, and I'm watching this movie and I'm saying, did they write this about me? Where did this movie come from? And then when when I became friendly with her, we started talking about it. She was just like, this was the life, and this was your life. I was like, I know, I can't even imagine it. But I just can't even imagine women my age still in the life and not wanting to get out of the life. It's just very hard to get away from those type of guys.
I had a principal here in Manhattan who at one time I don't know whether she came from Brooklyn or not, but she must have, because the way she talked, I could tell.
Right.
And she might have been like you, part of that life growing up. And she used to call it the first time she said to us, the mothers and fathers, and I was thinking mothers and fathers. It took me a few minutes, MAFIA, because it was the Mothers and Fathers or Italian Association, but I was pretty dumb, I guess.
But what's so sad about it is everything that's on television and all of these mafia movies, it's like, as soon as you say I'm Italian, people automatically think you're in the mob or you're doing something bad, and that's so not true.
Yeah, I have two of my friends from elementary school and high school, and they used to always tell me that. And I still see them, and they said it was always awful. In fact, my brother married a girl whose background's Italian, and they had their own delicatessen, and everyone said, "Oh, we know,
Is there a reason why you kept your Sicilian father's name?
I don't know. I wanted, my name, my maiden name, the name that's on my book, that's my married name.
Oh.
So what I didn't realize what you were saying to me. As soon as I got married, of course, I changed my name. And even when I wrote the book, I was staying with my married name. My father didn't deserve, since he left when I was born, he didn't deserve for me to keep his name.
So did you carry it as a kid?
I carried it as a kid growing up. Then when I met my husband and got married, I became Corso. And my husband is a very well-known, New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street broker. I mean, it's something that I went from that life to the Wall Street life.
What's
it was
the
amazing.
TV program, a series about the wives of the mafia? What's it called? Did anybody see it?
There's some sort.
The Real Lives.
It's the Mob Wives.
The Mob Wives.
And then there's Married to the
it's
Mob.
new.
That was the movie.
The Mob Wives. It's relatively new this year.
Relatively new.
Yeah.
It's very difficult because I don't really like the show, but I can relate with the show.
I'm sure, because when you were talking, it felt like if you watch this program, these women are
It's very, very bad. It's not good. Now, here's the sad part about that. The main character, there's a woman named Renee.
Right.
That's the main one. Renee was my maid of honor. I grew up with her. I know, it's, you know, you grow up with these girls, and then we just, you know, disconnected because I went another life and she stayed here. Next thing you know, she's doing this show, and I wound up seeing her, and she said to me, you know, you should come on, you're a legitimate person. I said, man, I can never do that show. And it's not that I have, you know, she was always good to me, she was always a dear friend, but it's just not what I'm
So
looking to do.
you weren't really a mom, what, if you were a mom girlfriend?
Oh, yeah. I was a girlfriend. And I think I was one of so many others. I mean, it was like they have the main one.
Right.
And then they have a whole bunch of others. The whole thing makes no sense to me, but
How did your mother take it?
you know, she was weak, my mother. So I was the strongest one in the house next to my grandmother. And I'm not going to sit here and say she should have done a lot more, but she should have done a lot more. But, you know, what was I to do? You know, finally I was 17 years old and she threw the Daily News at me and said, here's your boyfriend, he's on the, you know, cover and he's committing all these crimes, and what are you going to do? And I'm like, what am I going to do? You know, and I go to him and say, I don't want to go out with you anymore. And he can't do that, you know. But when he got convicted and went away, it was 20 years after that that I decided I'm going to publish this book. And I went out there and it literally sold in a week.
How much of
Really
it is
amazing.
autobiographical?
A lot of it's autobiographical, but everything has changed. It's really based on my life, but I wanted to change a lot of things. Because I wanted to walk away, you know, I was in an abusive relationship emotionally and physically. And I didn't have much help growing up either. So I wanted to get my story across as a young woman who got out and look at me today. And if I can get out and look at me today, there's so many others who could. And it's not only Brooklyn. This is a worldwide thing. Women get into relationships, not only with mafia guys, that's a bad way to go, but just abusive relationships, and you want to get out of it. I feel I always have her with me. I forgive her completely. It is what it is. You know, she was my mother, and I love her.
And you didn't know you didn't know her mother, you didn't know your maternal grandmother.
Oh yeah, Rose was my mother's mother. Yes. Oh, her I knew. I lived with her.
I know
until
that
I
you
was
lived with
21
the
years
Jewish
old.
grandmother.
Yes, my
That's
Jewish
the one.
grandmother.
But I thought your mother was Catholic.
No.
No, she converted.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
she
see.
converted.
Okay.
One of the things that of many things that I enjoyed about the book is there's a strong use of music, and you get a big time flavor of the period from the first portion. Actually, the first few chapters have a lot of songs. They're either playing on the
The
radio
70s,
or they're in you're thinking of them, and I'm saying to myself, I said, wow, there's a couple of them that are mentioned there that you don't even hear anymore.
I love the 70s music, and I think why I gravitate to this day, it just puts me in a sense of peace, and I think it's because that was the best times I spent with my mom. It was that early 70s period. And she was, you know, she was a product of a Woodstock child. You know, she was very much Woodstock, and, you know, and that's when she was very hippie-ish and all of that stuff. And I just enjoyed the music tremendously. And then every chapter I would write, I would think about it and I would put the lyrics in. At first I had like 4 or 5 sentences, and my editor said, no, we're going to have to start buying this, so we got to cut it down to 2, which it worked out fine. You're allowed 2 sentences. So I put it throughout the book. It just gives you the flavor of where you're at. Yeah. Along with all the food and all that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is still there.
So where did you go to school, Vincent? You went to public school?
I went to public school. We couldn't afford private school or Catholic school.
Right.
So I went to PS 112, my elementary, and then I went to Shallow Junior High School, and then to Utrecht.
Oh, okay.
And then what?
Well, then I had Utrecht.
Across the street?
That's it, Trick.
What's the
Then-
high school called?
Utrecht.
Oh, okay.
Utrecht. Yeah. I know, it sounds like Utrecht. Oh, I can't.
Still not sure what you're saying.
New Utrecht. So it's
Only people from Brooklyn know
Utrecht. New Utrecht.
Just like from the
Does
Dutch.
that-
You not go way back in the history of New York from.
I'm
With the
assuming.
Dutch?
I'm assuming. I don't know, but I know that's the right. I think that's the
So
right.
it is.
name.
It is the right spelling,
Utrecht,
but,
right?
and that's the right name. But I'm pretty sure it goes way back in the New York history
Yeah.
to the Dutch.
Sure. Must
Oh, I
be.
didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to look it up again. I have to Google it, but from way back in there.
In the book, I changed it to New Kaiser High School, but since we're in such an intimate setting,
Actually, was interesting too. character of Tony, actually, the father he was half Dutch.
Yeah.
And, yeah, and so one of the other things too is he apparently came from a family that was no stranger to crime because of the father.
The father,
Right.
his involvement in crime and his jail time. But I feel his mother was a big influence in this. I've never seen anything like it. You have to understand, I was so young going into this home. They would cook, it was a nice family, everything was great. I just didn't understand how, the son can go out, rob a radio or rob something, come home, and it was okay. So I didn't understand, instinct was, this is wrong. But I like him, but how do I get out? But do I stay? So I was back and forth with this, and I couldn't go home and talk to my mother about this. It was just something that, because she was going to say, well, I went out with this horrible Italian guy too, and he beat the shit out of me and all of this. So, history's repeating itself, and there wasn't that. So, I had to figure this out on my own. And I figured it out a little too late.
He remained well, we'll say friendly with the ex-girlfriend because he was involved in an accident and didn't.
And she actually is crippled to this day. Now, what's so interesting about this is now being on Facebook, these people come out of the woodwork and they're like, "Are you the Suzanne that we grew up with? Oh my God, is this your book?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is. Yes, it is." But everyone's been wonderful. Everyone's supportive. Everyone buys the book, and I'm really happy that I made the right choice in, bringing it out. So, but yeah, this girl is around still today.
Yeah, that was pretty sad.
I know. It was crazy.
But on the whole, it was optioned, or is it in the works?
That's what we're doing now.
Okay.
Is the screenplay stashed. So that's what we're doing now. Yeah.
And
I'm curious to see how that will play out.
Yeah, I think it will be extremely successful.
Thank
I mean, it's.
I feel from a woman's point of view, it's more unique. I don't know if that's been done before, but we'll see. We'll see how this all works.
Because it's definitely it's a page turner. I mean, I read this book 2 times, and it's even after the second time, you'll find there's some more songs. It's like, oh yeah, I just heard that song on the radio. You can picture the flavor. You're on the street walking with your friends, and you can hear. There must have been cars going by with the music playing, and it's like, oh, that Randy Crawford, Street Life. It's like, man, I can remember that.
And every song, it just didn't go in. It went in because I really felt it. I said, oh, I remember this at this period of my life. And it was hard. It was difficult to write the book, to be honest with you. But then when I finally got to the 20th draft, it was, I just let it all go.
Do you have any other pieces in the works that would be coming out, like maybe an addendum novel or something?
Well, I'm working on book 2 now, which will be Brooklyn's story, Over the Bridge. So it's going to be the continuation of Samantha's journey, and I take you into the Wall Street life, which is a very interesting life, to be honest with you. It's almost like there's a mafia and there's Wall Street, and you know what? They play on each other. It's very interesting. Yeah. So I'm writing that whole book now.
Excellent.
How would you like to cast Samantha?
I personally feel, I don't know if I'm going to be in control of this, but I feel that Samantha and Tony, the main characters of the book, should be unknowns.
Ah,
I
good.
really feel they should be unknowns because the rest of the book, Olympia Dukakis wants to play the grandmother, and Lorraine Bracco wants to play the role of the boyfriend's mother. And then there's her, I don't know if you know, but her brother-in-law is Aidan Quinn, so he may play her husband in that. And I think, when you start filling it up with names, I feel that the young ones should be fresh and new. That's just my opinion.
Armand Asante.
I convinced him to play the priest because I would do it for you, Sue, so he loves it. Again, we have to see when this all happens. I don't know. You may get a producer who's going to go, Sue, I love it, but I don't want any of those people. So, and we're at that point now, so I'll keep you posted with what happened.
Did you write the screenplay?
Yes, I did. It's completed, so I'm very excited.
Wonderful.
You know, it's something I wanted to always do. I just, divine timing is everything, and I was just scared to bring it out. But once I got my book deal and they said we want to do it as a novel, I said great, because that's how I want to do it. I wasn't going to do a nonfiction book. I just want to talk about the things I want to say. You know?
Maybe we can, when the time comes, one of the places where we do screenings here on this television, but also at Guildhall, we've done a few across the street. I don't know if you've ever been in there. It's a
No, I have not.
350
Is
seat
it?
house with a huge screen.
Oh, that's great.
So maybe, down the line.
Well, you guys going to be using that for the Hampton Festival?
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
a
part of it,
couple
yeah.
of
That's
films
part of it,
around
okay.
there. The majority, though, are going to be the ones shown down here at the UA, over here on Main Street, but then there's a few spread out throughout the
Sag
general
Harbor.
Oh,
Province
that's
area.
nice. That's nice.
Yes, that's the 13th through the 17th,
Uh-huh.
so that's going to be a fun event.
Oh, good.
But I just want to ask, does anyone have any questions in particular that they would like to ask? Anything that...
How long has the book been out?
It came out in January.
Has it been reviewed?
Oh, yeah. The New York Times was very kind to me. USA Today called me one of the voices to watch for 2011, so I was excited about that. The Daily News, the Post, and it comes out in paperback next month. So, and that's all on my website. Everything's on my website. Any reviews I get, any TV stuff I do.
And there's also, you have the Facebook page.
Facebook
which-
page I have a lot of fans on that, which is great. I mean, I had someone email me from Italy the other day. Oh, and I sold the rights to Italy, so I'm excited when that comes out in Italian. I can't wait to see that.
Do you read Italian?
I don't. I should, but I don't.
Are you planning an audio copy of it?
They want to do that, so we're talking about that as well. I don't know if they're going to use my voice, if they're going to use someone else, but whoever they use, I hope it's an authentic.
The audiobooks, actually, to do the audiobooks, it is rather a difficult task because the reader has to, if it's one reader, they have to play every part.
Yeah.
And if you hear the Harry Potter ones, Jim Dale is excellent playing all the parts, capturing the actual
Oh, that's great.
mood and feeling. But audiobooks, it's like listening to a radio play, and many of them are quite good translations of the work. One person I recall who was very good at doing audiobooks was Stuart Whitman. The Seawolf was an excellent reading that he did. But
We have to be very animated
Yeah.
to do it.
we do have a pretty good collection of audiobooks. That would definitely be one that we would
I don't know
start.
what they're going to do. I mean, they mentioned it to me a couple of times, so I'm curious what they're going to do.
Excellent. Excellent.
How does it go from being a bunch of pages under your bed to a real book?
Well, I had the book, and then I did not take it out again until I got married, after I was married. So it was a long time. I hid it. And I took it out. I remember my husband said, you want to write, so just stay home and write. And I took it out, and he never read it. And then I started to do it. I started to, rewrite again, get all these drafts. And then I met some agents. It worked. It didn't work. No one was budging. No one was buying it. And then finally, I have to tell you, it was so many years later that I decided I really want to do this. It's something because I was producing a couple of plays, all that stuff. And then I came out and I met this one agent, and she said, there's this new imprint over at Simon & Schuster. I think that they may be interested in you. I go, okay, just send it in. And she sent it in for 10 pages, and then he called in the next day and said, send me the book. And then a week later, I found myself in their offices, and there was something that I waited a long time to do that. I didn't actively pursue it for all those years because I was scared of the material. But then once I got in there, I knew I found the home. I knew I found the right home. But I would always take it out every year and read it and go, I want to do this, but no, I can't. And I put it away. But now the fear is gone, and I can't even imagine the greatest place that I want to be.
great.
But yeah. So it always starts off as a manuscript, you change, and then boom, it goes to them, and then, you know, they start editing, and we go back and forth, and it's a great process. I enjoy it.
You have some upcoming appearances at,
I have 2 Brooklyn appearances, believe it or not, and I can't even tell you how many books I sell. In Brooklyn, it's unbelievable. So it's funny because I am going to Greenpoint. First I'm going to Bensonhurst, then Bay Ridge, then Greenpoint. And because I already did Barnes & Noble, I already did Borders when it first came out, so I don't know if I'm going to redo it again with the paperback.
there's a bookstore in Greenpoint by a park. Is there a bookstore or a candy store?
It's it's Greenwood. It's no, not Greenwood. It's Green something though. It's Green something. There's a cafe in there. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, and everyone has real good stories. You know, so it's nice.
Yeah, as I was reading it, I thought to myself, right when I saw Bay Ridge, not that long ago, I saw a little documentary on the making of Saturday Night Fever.
So did I. How great was that?
And I thought to myself, because they wanted, the mafia wanted Paramount to hire security for John Travolta. They wanted them to hire mafia security. And there's one point where the director of the film says they threw a Molotov cocktail at the Odyssey, the disco, a little, he said, very flimsy made thing, just threw it up there. And he said, then the guy, the next day comes over and says, hey, I heard you boys had a little bit of a barbecue last night. I was like, jeez. And they gave them something like, it was like $200 a day or a week for him.
That was an amazing biography, and especially about how it was so difficult to make that movie. Obstacle after obstacle, well, it's one of the best movies.
Yeah, that just, it made me, you know, and with the mentioning of some of the music of the period, it's got a lot of that flavor.
They really captured it. They really did.
But, yeah, I just, one thing I wanted to ask is, with all of these, we spoke about the television shows, but how do some of the comedy films, like when you see some of these, like, there was one called Jane Austen's Mafia. It was a very silly, you know, play on The Godfather, and there were a few others like Jerry Brosnan's The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. Do these have kind of a...
Would analyze this and that, fall into all those categories. I don't know. I mean, they're actually fun to watch, to be honest. They're not the hardcore movies that, you know, that really are disturbing. But you know what's funny? For some reason, The Godfather, because it was the original, it wasn't as disturbing as Goodfellas. Goodfellas was more disturbing. But they are. The whole subject is disturbing. So you have to really understand it. And these movies are very good at exploring it and, you know, telling you really what it's all about. But the other ones are fun. You analyze this and that.
But don't you think that, like in some of those movies where they actually show, like say The Godfather, having their home life, they were very nice and good to the children,
Oh, they're
etc.
wonderful.
So
Right.
but yet they're going on just what you said on the lower case where he would just go and rob a store and come home. But on the higher place, they were still always wonderful to their family, even though they were now saying, well, you're going to go and knock that guy off or something, or take to
They
the
would
mattresses
go,
or whatever.
kill someone, come home, and have a Sunday dinner. I just can't wrap my head around that.
And I never understood how they still get away with it. I mean, how did they not get caught?
I think it's a fear. I think maybe even legitimate people are afraid of them. It's very, you know, no one wants to get killed. I mean, I don't think the mafia is as strong as it was. That's just me saying that from what we see on TV and from what they're able to talk about.
How organized crime has lasted so long in this country when they have taken care of every other or tried to?
I know. Well, when Giuliani came in, he really
I bet.
did a lot.
Uh-huh.
But even now, they're going to do this movie
Especially the second one. They did one for each.
They did one with Armand Assante, yeah. And now John Travolta is going to do it, but it's the whole fascination with it, and they're able to do this. So
People are fascinated by the mafia.
When I was in high school, though, and I was in a private school, it was the time when it was that big, the mafia had a big meeting in some place, I don't know, it was the Catskills, or the big mountain meeting of all the heads.
Yeah.
And I think the FBI did come in on them. So one of them, I don't know which one it was, but one of them was being, he was arrested or something, and there was going to be a big trial coming up. And the main FBI person who organized that raid, his daughter went to school, and she happened to be in my class. The classes were very small. But the daughter of the fellow who was arrested was also in our class. And they both came every day in limousines and had security. And a lot of us didn't really realize what happened. And of course, the private schools and the teachers were very, quiet about the whole thing. But it's just like what you're saying. It was like everything was kept quiet because the FBI didn't want a big fuss, and organized crime didn't want a big fuss. And for a long time, both of those girls were always in our class. And yet nothing was ever said because it was just made it would have been such a terrible thing. Also, the FBI didn't want anybody to know because they were going to have this raid whenever it was going to happen. So it's true. Later on, as I got older, I realized the same thing as you. How could this exist? But I guess if they weren't bothering anybody, they were only bothering themselves. I'm asking you if that's true.
Yeah,
if they weren't after you or me, and I know sometimes they bothered stores for protection, but they didn't bother usually the ordinary person. They
weren't out to.
So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it could go on. I don't know.
They're still making a life about whose life it is. It's against the law.
How did you feel yourself like being with this person who's killing?
I didn't know about any murders until he actually wound up going on trial. And it was interesting because he wasn't brought on trial for murders. He was brought on trial for a drug conviction, which he really didn't do, but somehow they railroaded him and got him for that because they wanted to put him away. It was only after he was away when I remember they had come to me and said, it was years later, I was already married, my daughter had to be 2, and they said, do you know we just reconvicting him on like 12 murders? And I was like, 12 murders? Do you know this, that? And no, I don't.
And you were living with him at the time?
No, I never lived with him. I was married at this point. He was already in jail.
I meant when the murders were committed.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I want to say yes.
If you lived with him.
I never lived with him. No, I never lived with him at all. So I don't know. He never took me out to dinner and said, hey, I just killed someone. That he didn't do. But it was just, I later found out how notorious he was and all of these things. The usual, if you ever leave me, I'll kill you. If you ever leave me. And there's something to be said about that because they could easily do away with you.
Right.
So
you must have been a wreck the whole time.
I really was, and looking back on it, I'm just very grateful that my life went the way it did.
You're not a lesson.
Yes, exactly. So, I can't stress enough, even if you're ever in an abusive relationship, and I know how hard it is, it's easier said than done to run away from it. But I can't even tell you. From the first shut up, I should have been gone, but I wasn't, and it's very hard.
That's most people that are abused. Same story.
Wait, you didn't have anyone to help you get out?
No. No. There you go. So it was one of those things. I would go to church, all the time.
They're not taking you in church to live.
Right. I'm praying, please get me out. What do I do? It was my faith that got me by. And then, something happens and he gets convicted, and then there's a little glimmer of light over there. Okay, well, what happens if he does go away? And then he went away, for 20 years.
Were there any mock girl perks, though?
Of course.
Tell me the
Your
perks.
furs, your jewels, all
Yes.
that garbage, but what is it worth? It's all, it's all material, it's all raw, so it doesn't matter.
What happened to people, like say you were still with him, and he's in jail?
There are women that are still with them. I mean, you
But,
see
you know,
that.
what do you do? Yeah, what happens with the you're getting the furs and jewels? I mean, who's then giving them to you?
I think what happens is the friends of these people provide the lifestyle. It's like they're all connected. So if one goes to jail, the other one steps in and provides, takes care of the women. And it's a whole separate planet.
Did you know the Naughty group?
I didn't really know them. I mean, I've seen them, but I didn't really know them to.
You weren't on their alias.
I wasn't with them. No.
On any of
No.
their lists.
No.
Were you ever on drugs?
Excuse me?
Drugs.
Was I ever on drugs?
Yeah.
No, never.
You never.
Never. Mm-mm.
Were you?
I don't even really drink now. I never went, my mother, not me, I didn't. It was either, I could have went down that road, or I could have chose, a different road. So it was,
You had a lot of strength then.
I really did. I really do. Right now I have a lot of strength. And I have a 12-year-old daughter.
Oh, you did?
And I cannot wait for her to read this book, but she can't yet. She can't until she's at least 16, 17. But, things are going to come out. I just did a huge Glamour article, which is going to come out. So, they read that. And little by little, I tell her things, but eventually she's going to know everything, and it's okay.
And recipe too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not embarrassed of anything. I have no regrets, and I had this life, and you know what? I'm sharing it with other women, and I'm okay. That's all good. You have to be strong. You can't be weak. You just can't.
Well, it's
I
wonderful
would.
that you had that strength.
Yes,
God,
yes.
For the life that you had.
No, absolutely. And it's all good. It's good now, so I don't even, I know it sounds crazy, but I don't even dwell on it. I think each draft I did, it was so therapeutic for me that I almost cured myself, that kind of thing. The writing and everything, so. And it doesn't bother me to talk about it. You do have to talk about it, so.
Wow.
So you're going to have a play on Broadway?
That's interesting. I was thinking of a 3-character play. I'm talking to my agent about that now. I think it's fun. I don't think it's something I would write. I'm not a playwright. But I think it's something that should definitely be explored. It would be great. Like, I could see Olympia doing that, because she loves the stage with 2 other people. I don't think it should be more than 3 characters. I think it should be 3 women. 3 generations of women. We'll see.
Sounds good.
Steve will be the first to know.
I definitely look forward to the motion picture coming out.
Yeah,
And
so do I.
Any other works that you have? I'm on the Facebook, so
Definitely, of course.
we'll stay posted.
The Facebook is good. I mean, you have to, you can't post it.
No, I'm not on
You
Facebook.
You
I'm
keep
too
your
old.
life
Sitting right here on
personal.
Facebook now.
I keep it personal.
Oh, look at you.
Oh, what? So
It's really
She's so
good.
social.
So it's good.
well, I mean, if you know my name, you're not going to find a whole lot. I don't have my picture on it. But I actually got it because friends my age